So hi everyone, welcome to the Multimodal Weekly webinar series hosted by Retrieval Labs. Some of you are new to here and some of you has been regular attendee, but we've been meeting every Friday at 1:30 p.m. Pacific time for an hour. And some of the topics that we tend to cover included research in multimodal AI and foundation models, engineering application of multimodal in different verticals. Since we focus more on the video understanding side of things, sometimes we have folks who share interesting, video AI and multimodal projects, as well as the engineering technologies behind. And then often we also have team members from our labs talk about our technologies, our API, etc. In the past, we had a speaker talking about multimodal search, vision language model, national language model, video storyboarding, video synchronization. And today we have two speakers, Jonathan Rosenbluth from Cohere and Abhay Kashyap from Multimodal Labs. So Jonathan is currently Director of Product Strategy at Cohere, a friend of Multimodal Labs, and we'll talk about Retrieval Augmented Generation, which is a product that has been quite heavily discussed in the large language model space. So and also Cohere is one of the frontier company in this space, so definitely excited to hear the thought leadership of the team and what you guys been thinking about this topic. And then on the second half of our webinar, we'll have Abhay who will talk about one of the open source project that he's been building called Frogbase that can help users to navigate and search within audio, visual, multimedia content. I actually encountered Abhay at one of the meetup here in San Francisco a few weeks ago, and I think he also got a chance to see the 12 Labs product demo as well, and we connect a little bit after that. And given our interest in multimodal, I felt it makes sense for them to come here and share a bit about the project and how we think about this space in general. Quick logistic note: when you have any question, feel free to send them in the Zoom chat, and we'll have a short Q&A session after both speakers finish. So with that introduction out of the way, I'll let Jonathan get started. You can share your screen and go ahead with your presentation.
Awesome. And if you can just enable screen sharing, and while I'm pulling up my screen, just thanks for having me. It's great to be here. Huge fan of 12 Labs and what you're working on. Grateful to be included. And I'm really excited to chat with you all. I'm going to try and make this a little bit interactive. So as we get started, I'm just going to start off by getting us used to being interactive here, which I'm going to ask everyone to type into the chat where you are today. So just let me know where you are at in the world. And Jay, I appreciate that note in the chat. We're huge fans of 12 Labs, as you know. All right. The West Coast of the US is heavily represented. Michael's and Andre's West Coast too, but Michael's got the East Coast pride. I'm up in Canada, right in the middle of the country in Toronto. But this is a West Coast group, and Matan is holding it down for the South. Awesome. So we're going to talk today about retrieval augmented generation, and let's have a little bit of fun with this. So my question for you is, what happens on day one of onboarding onto a new job? And you're all pros at typing into the chat now, so I'm sure I'll see some responses there. But what happens on day one? And this isn't a trick question. Chaos. Meet new colleagues. Both of these things are true. Introductions. Yeah. You spend 5 hours trying to get your laptop running and knowledge handover and HR meeting. So all of these things are true. But I want to talk about spending 5 hours trying to get your laptop running. Because what happens when you get your laptop running is you get connected with systems, right? Who here has access to like Google Drive or SharePoint or something like that? You can give me a quick hand up. Yeah, we all do. As people, we're not very useful if we don't actually have connections with systems. And that analogy actually probably holds true for large language models as well. But let's take a step back. There's a new technology interface that's really changing the world. And we've seen like every 15 years or so, a new technology just changes our world. And most recently, in 2022, it was chat. And the world was delighted by chat. When chat came out and ChatGPT came out, it was like overnight, all of a sudden, everyone was talking about what AI can do. And I'm going to show you how Canadian I am. I was in a locker room playing hockey in a men's league, and I'm in the back of the locker room, and I hear at the front guys talking to this like AI that can write press releases, and they're going on about it. And this has been my world for, I guess, 2.5 years now. And I'm sort of chuckling to myself at how mainstream this has become. And so I'm going to show you a little demo of something you're all familiar with, but how these large language models operate. And this is just the pure sort of chat-based large language model. So I say, tell me about Airbnb. And I get a response about Airbnb. And then I ask, what is Airbnb's strategy? And I hear it's to unlock more hosting, grow and engage the guest community. I don't know what it means to unlock more hosting. I don't know if you all know what it means to unlock more hosting, but so I'm going to ask what it means to unlock more hosting. And I hear that, it's having enough selection for guests booking on the platform, attracting more hosts, and so on and so forth. But let's say I want a presentation outline because, it doesn't just end with the data that I'm taking in, but I actually want to share something. And so I get a presentation outline on Airbnb. Now, there are problems with these chat models. I mean, that was pretty cool. I think it's pretty cool to be able to say, give me a presentation outline. And I used to be a management consultant. I would have loved having that. But there are problems with chat models. And so the way these chat models work is they're predicting the next token or the next word in a sequence. And so I'm going to ask you all to pretend that you are a large language model. And I'm going to ask you to predict the next word in this sequence or the next few words in this sequence. Finish the sentence for me. Generative language models are blank. And I'm going to ask you to share it in the chat. Powerful, innovative, big, necessary. I love it. These are great. Surprising. I've got a bit of a different take. They're know-it-alls. They're frigging know-it-alls. You ask a large language model any question, and it gives you an answer to that question. Whether it's right or wrong, it sounds super confident. Now, who here knows somebody in their life who's sort of like that? That person who's in the meeting who always has the answer and says it really confidently and sometimes is right. Yeah, I'd say we don't love having those people on the team. No, I don't think it's the two of you. But that becomes less of what we want. So how do we solve this know-it-all problem with large language models? And interactive, and maybe you're I don't know what I signed up for. But what is the temperature in Louisville, Kentucky right now? And go look it up wherever you want. Just get me the right answer. What is the temperature in Louisville, Kentucky? And because of our first question, I know that none of you can look out the window and tell me what the temperature is. So I'm going to look for you in the chat. "80 degrees Fahrenheit," coming from Jay. Jay, how do you know that?
I Googled it.
You Googled it, right? So
Yeah.
Other folks might have gone to the weather app and looked it up, but my guess was that nobody knew the answer off the top of their head. And Jay, what you did is a trait of people who are productive in the working world everywhere. It's sort of a basic human characteristic now, which is you get asked a question and you go to the source where that information sits. You find the right information, you internalize it, and you share it to respond, right? I took a course in my freshman year of university that was called Minds, Brains, and Machines. And the premise of the course was, if we write down information that we rely on, is that actually part of our minds? Now, I think this course was I'm not going to tell you how many years ahead of its time, because that's how retrieval augmented generation systems are set up. It's this basic human trait that we're training our models, this capability of understanding the question, going to the source of information, finding that source, and then sharing it back. And so that, to me, is the solution to the know-it-all problem, this idea of retrieval augmented generation. So I'm now going to share a demo with you, which shows a little bit of retrieval augmented generation in action and how we can piece together the skills of retrieval augmented generation with some of the task completion of the chat models that we have fallen in love with. So bear with me, folks. You should be able to see my screen here, which shows Coral, which is an offering from Cohere, which is sort of our chat offering. And you see in the top right corner, I have grounding on. And this is connected to the internet. So we're grounding based on the internet. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask it a question. I'm going to say, tell me about 12 Labs. Anybody here know about 12 Labs? Anybody heard of it? So I'm going to say, tell me about 12 Labs. And what's going to happen now is there's a web search that goes on. Information that's found on the web that's then shared back with the generative model. The generative model responds and includes citations. And so let me make my screen a little bit bigger. But these are citations. And so you can see where the information comes from with each part of the answer. So when we say 12 Labs is an AI company, here's the sources that suggested that 12 Labs was an AI company. And Jay, I'm looking at you. How do we do on this one? We did okay. We did all right. Okay.
Fantastic. Actually, I'm loving the interface. I'm going to play around with Cohere Coral. Awesome. This is looking great. Congratulations.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. It's still in development, as you can see from our disclaimer down there. So bear with us here, but we're really excited about it. And now I'm going to ask it a softball. But notice how I don't say who is the CEO of 12 Labs. I just say who is the CEO. And the model will take in the context of the conversation to create a search query to the internet to get the relevant responses back. But now what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, hey, let's turn grounding off. So I turn grounding off. And now it's no longer completing the searches to the internet. And instead, I'm going to give it a task to do. And so I'm going to say, draft a professional email to Jay that covers the following topics. I'm a huge fan of 12 Labs. I have a candidate who I think would be great for their team. Who should I get in touch with? So now, instead of me having to think really hard about how to frame this and go through the painful exercise of actually drafting my own email, I'm gonna have the model do it for me. And so I get a response, dear Jay, I hope this email finds you well. I'm a huge fan, particularly impressed with your company's focus on video understanding. Sweet, I love it. I love the specific reference. But Jay, when I email you, how often do you get emails that start with Dear Jay and are this formal? Would you say often or not very often?
Like 100 times a day.
Yeah, so I think there's a little bit of humor there. I'm going to say, make this more casual. Right, and so now it's like a little bit more in the tone that I would say it in. And so what I get really excited about is retrieval augmented generation provides us with a path to get accurate answers to our questions based on information that exists outside of the model. The model's able to go and retrieve and allows us to get more up-to-date information, because as long as that knowledge base, whether it's the internet, your internal docs at work, whatever it may be, are up to date, it'll be able to pull in the up-to-date information. But then when we pair that with these command style tasks where I ask it to do something and it does it, that's where the magic happens for me. And I think about what it's going to be like to do our jobs into the future. And I'm talking just a few years into the future. And I think we're going to be in a place where we won't be able to imagine doing our jobs without these helpful assistants, because they just shoot our productivity forward. And I can't imagine doing my job without a computer. Can't imagine doing my job without the internet. And I think this is the next component. And we do sometimes think about computers, internet as different technologies, and AI is yet another different technology. When people look back 100 years out, I don't think they'll see this as three distinct technologies, but actually part of the evolution of our sort of period of history, where we get into AI, but AI is tied to the internet, which is tied to computers. These aren't three separate pieces, but this is the natural evolution. And so I'll pause there. I'm going to stop sharing my screen here. But I'd say that, like, when we think about a few of the leading use cases for this, we think about these like knowledge assistants, the workplace assistants who are there with us that I'm talking about. I think about going to a website and being able to interact with the application that I'm engaging with, whether it's a website actually or an app, and having a conversational agent who's there to help me do whatever I want to do on that platform. And I think about customer support agents actually being able to use this for themselves to make them more productive and more effective when engaging with questions that are coming their way. So that's what I get fired up about. I'm sort of curious to hear from you if there are any questions on retrieval augmented generation, on the application, on what I just showed you, or if you have any reactions to it. You think, hey, it's actually not transformative. This is like basic and boring, or if you're excited about it. Andre, go ahead.
Just a second. I was thinking, just had this thought right now, that a lot of what it's doing in the case of writing that letter, for instance, is taking this very concise piece of information you have, adding some stuff to it, some syntactic sugar, you might even regard it as, and then sending it to somebody who then has to digest the syntactic sugar, which makes it, puts it in a certain social context. It makes it nice. But I think maybe there could be a trend where people will realize that they are merely putting syntactic sugar around it, and people begin to accept things without that syntactic sugar, so it takes them less time to read it. If you follow my logic. Now, I guess I would add that it takes 4 times longer to type it than it does to read it. So if you add a little extra to it before you send it, it isn't that big of a time cost for the reader. But it seems like what that thing is doing in the case of writing the letter is merely adding social niceties and things that that the initiator of this thing already has in mind. Mind you, they have a cycle to check it, so they get to add a little more information at that stage. But it just strikes me that maybe this will cause a demolition of these social niceties to just keep things concise.
Yeah, Andre, first off, I think you win the virtual background of the day. Unless
thank you.
Not a virtual background, in which case you win the background of the day.
It was an accident. I know it's kind of unprofessional. I had it for something else.
But, I like it. No, I'm a total fan.
Okay.
So Andre, you're making an interesting point, which is like, wait a second. You're sort of like telling you what you want it to say, and then it's just like adding syntactic sugar or like just like framing around it.
Now you have this checking cycle, so that does allow you to add additional information, and that might be more economic than entering that initial information if the system gets it correct most of the time.
But it's sort of a funny description, actually, which might be apt of like what we do when I want to write an email, which is like I think about what I want to say, and then I like put it into sort of a socially acceptable format for how I'm going to write this email, and then I send it. And maybe the sort of cynical or funny take is we're going to have AI that converts bullet points to emails. And then the person who's reading that email is going to have AI convert emails into bullet points. So what people actually write are bullet points. What people read are the same bullet points. Maybe that's where
maybe you express it with some syntactic sugar. Maybe you're bicycling or something and you dictate it and it's a whole mess. And then the person reading it specifies how that information is then reinterpreted into English depending on their circumstances and desires. I mean, it's like translation, but it's just within the same language.
Yeah, and can it like sort of jokes aside about just having LLMs create more verbose text than make it summarize it. What really excites me is like how I can use it to do the tasks I don't really want to do, and then engage with it to like adjust it. Well, that's actually
that
more
adjusting
in editing.
phase, I think, has some value in being able to do that swiftly.
I think so too.
Yeah.
But I think that's a great point. And Pranay, I'll jump over to you. I'm seeing the virtual hand up, but Andre, thank you for raising that.
Sure.
Yeah, no rush whatsoever. These headphones even noise canceling right now. Anyways, thanks for sharing. Yeah, I like the interface, and I think it's hilarious that on cohere.com/Coral, the example is give me step-by-step instructions for creating a new LLC in California, which is exactly what I'm doing. It's like quite literally one of the main things I'm doing right now. How do you, or how does the algorithm choose which sources to use?
Yeah, good question. So first off, Pranay, let me just say very clearly and very explicitly while this is being recorded that nothing on the Cohere website is giving you legal advice for how to set up that LLC.
Yeah, don't worry about it. Appreciate it though.
But so there's a whole piece on this system which we didn't actually look at, which is how do you do the retrieval? How do you set up retrieval? And you know, my friends at 12 Labs know probably as well as anybody else in the world that retrieval is really important. How you get high quality embeddings to enable retrieval can get you better results. And so one piece of it is how do we set up intelligent semantic search systems to be able to find the right information. But as we make these systems more complex and more robust, we're going to start to say, hey, if I'm searching over my documents, the document from 2 years ago might be more semantically similar. But if it's a question that's temporally relevant, I want the document from 2 days ago. And so as we build out these systems for specific use cases and tasks, there's going to be like the tough question of how do we drive performance on retrieval so that the model's finding the right information. And Jay went to Google and found the right information about the weather in Kentucky fairly easily, but it might not always be that easy. And there might be times when, hey, we don't just want to search over text, but we want to search over video. And so how do we make sure that we're able to do both search over video, we're able to do both search over text, and then the relevant information is fed to the model to generate a response. And so I think all of this is coming, but the short answer is based on the use case, you want to architect your retrieval system to help you get the most accurate results. Does that make sense, Pranay? Follow-up question on that? Thoughts on that?
No, I appreciate it. It makes sense. Let's say when accessing external sources, one of my concerns is in not really the near future, and probably sooner than we think, there's going to be adversaries and adversarial information, misleading information, etc. And so I saw that there was a lot of like TechCrunch and these more reputable / more visited sites. So I'm guessing there's some sort of quality estimation in terms of sources, and for things that are more like on-prem or local, I think that that'll be a lot easier of a problem to solve. I think when you start expanding to like the web and whatnot, and when you have just mixed sources of data, or like things that conflict with one another, it'll be an interesting avenue to see how to essentially reduce the ability of adversaries being able to insert themselves into the text generation. So not a question, more so a thought, so we can just move along. But I think it's a inevitable yet exciting area of building robustness into your retrieval.
Totally. Appreciate you making that comment. And yes, there's more info on the web that may or may not be accurate. How do we make sure that there's accurate information being fed to the system? I think it's a really good call out.
Jay, you have a hand up? Maybe one last question.
Yeah.
Before moving to Abhay.
Jonathan, this seems incredibly powerful for enterprise users, especially, right? I can totally see law firms or financial institutions with like tens of millions of documents kind of stored in their central storage, kind of make really good use of it, right? I was wondering, how were they kind of solving the search prior to embedding based, or rag based search, right? And yeah, would love to hear.
So what's the current state before all of this? I'd say it varies pretty substantially. So when I used to work in consulting, I spent a lot of time looking up information. And it's sort of like a core capability and skill set is like how to find the right information and then take it in, synthesize it. And so I think like a lot of organizations have a number of different search systems right now where data can live in any of them. And employees, individuals sort of get used to like knowing how to go to the right spot and spend time finding the right information. It just sort of takes a while. And so
there was no silver bullet.
Yeah, so my hope is that this actually makes life simpler for them,
cool.
and makes life easier to find information.
Yeah, and then I have one more follow-up question. So, embedding-based retrieval is extremely powerful, but Cohere is innovating day after day, and you'll probably have newer models come out. And one caveat about embedding is that it's really hard to merge different embedding spaces, right, from different models. How do you think about that when kind of helping enterprises adopt retrieval-based or retrieval augmented like search, but then you're also kind of creating or training newer and more capable models, which will create different embeddings, right? More capable embeddings. So
yes.
This is something that 12 Labs is also actively working on, right? How do we deal with legacy embeddings and things like that, right?
Yeah, it's a great question. And like candidly, I think we're in the early innings of figuring out some of the questions to search in this way, and especially for retrieval augmented generation. But at Cohere, we sort of have a two-pronged approach. One is that we're really excited about our embeddings and our multilingual embeddings, and we encourage our partners and our customers to create systems that allow them to use our embeddings, turn their text through, get the embeddings back, and perform semantic search. But you raise a good point that like not everybody wants to do that or is ready to do that right away, or maybe they have a legacy system and it's not feasible right now to rip one out and put a new one in. And so we have a re-rank endpoint that basically goes on after the initial set of results have been returned that you can use to re-rank the candidate responses or the candidate items, the items that have been retrieved based on the semantic similarity to the query. And whether you're using an embedding-based search system or using a keyword-based search system or hybrid search, the re-rank can help boost performance. And so we're really excited about that as just like a really easy, just like add-on, just toss it on and performance gets way better as a way to help our customers who might not be ready to overhaul their full-on embedding systems. And James, appreciate the links in the chat, but I know my time's running to an end. So first off, just like I want to say tons of gratitude for having me here and the work that you're doing at 12 Labs. I think it's super exciting. This is a really fun community to be a part of. And unfortunately, I won't be able to stay until the end of the session, but I'm going to check out the recording afterwards. And I think the next one's going to be super cool. So really excited to hear what I can right now. And then when I need to run to catch the rest later. So thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, thanks, Jonathan.
Thanks, Jonathan.
Abhay, do you want to start sharing the screen and go ahead with your presentation?
Am I? Oh, give me 1 second. I apparently had to change the security preferences. There we go. All right.
Yes. Yeah.
Give me one. I may have to bounce out of the meeting. It looks like I can't just join without
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I think a few weeks ago there was a speaker talking about multimodal RAG, multimodal retrieval augmented generation, where you can retrieve like different modalities, right? So I think that's gonna be like the next evolution of RAG. where you get like, you know, audio plus text, right? Than just text to enhance the generation capabilities. So super excited to see how that space will look. All right, I can see your screen, Abhay.
Perfect. Give me 1 second. There we go. All right, thank you for having me as well. I found out about 12 Labs the last time I was at that AI Thinkers meetup. I thought it was really cool. I was sort of mucking around the same space, and it was really nice to actually see like a lot of interest in this space. So my thing would be mostly like a work in progress. So it's, once again, as I move some of these Zoom bars outside so I can click. All right. So most of this is just a hack. It's been things that I just sort of muck around with. I've named it Frogbase because I think frogs are kind of cool. So my sort of large intent is to actually look at sort of multimedia content, sort of make it more navigable. So I'm going to give a little bit of an introduction, something about my background and sort of the things that I've been up to. So my background is primarily sort of in AI, but it's mostly been unimodal. Started off with like knowledge bases, moved from knowledge bases to sort of natural language processing, mainly to populate those knowledge bases, and then sort of moved from there into recommender systems, largely leveraging sort of textual information to actually make recommendations better. I've interned and sort of worked at Walmart, and then I spent about 3 years at Stitch Fix. Now I'm sort of back at Walmart. I also do a fair bit of web development, and I primarily use Django, but yeah, since Streamlit came out, it's been a very rewarding affair with Streamlit. And Streamlit is something that I use with Frogbase as well. So I'm not much of a multimodal person. I've just mucked around in the vision space. So some things that I built, I think when Clip came out last year, sort of last spring, me and a couple of my friends, we decided to just see how it works. We just pulled about 1 million NFT images, from the blockchain, right? And then we just index everything with Clip and then put it out there. The website should still be up. And I remember using Pinecone at the time. I know Pinecone is really popular now, but at that time, it was sort of one of the few ones that actually had a really nice interface to kind of use. And yeah, it has both sort of Clip visual-based search and also has the cross-modal search. Something more, again, a little more recent, last fall when I think Stable Diffusion came out, given I was, I've been a little overtrained with Stitch Fix, so I'm very much into the whole fashion space. So I did a fair bit of experimentation with Stable Diffusion and its ability to sort of create designs. And so this is very old. So this was that first Stable Diffusion model. And you can see most of it is just in painting, but with in painting, the model gets enough priors to make the actual generations a lot more controlled. Again, this thing is also there. I haven't worked on it since like September, October of last year. So it just has like a bunch of explorations on like t-shirts and tattoos and sort of shoes, just to see what it's like. I'm sure the models are much better now. I also did the same thing. I also did I think the following month, I was really playing around with a lot of different things. So one of the other thing was trying to generate videos from lyrics by just using the semantics. And a lot of it was just generating keyframes with Stable Diffusion, doing a bit of interpolation. And then I also found this model from Google, which does frame interpolation pretty well. And it was about like creating smooth videos. But this is just me mucking around with sort of multimodal models. It's now vision's now my background. So a quick disclaimer here, this is a work in progress. So it's not going to be polished in any reasonable way, right? You can see it's just a little tadpole right now. It's making fuzzy noises. That's what it is right now. And also, there's no real affiliation with my employer. This is mostly things I do on the side. So I'm just gonna, instead of sort of telling what it is, I'm gonna give it, and I'm gonna spin a narrative around how this thing came about. So this really started as a simple Streamlit UI when Whisper came out. And this was, again, I forget if it was October or late September, but when it came out, I presume people would want to explore Whisper as a model. I was like, all right, fine. Streamlit is something I already have an affair with. Might as well sort of stitch them together and create a simple UI for people to kind of use Whisper. So it was very simple in that it would allow sort of video download from YouTube, and then also let you upload your own local file. And they would just sort of use transcription there. And I think I plugged in Hugging Face's summarization as well. It would sort of take the transcript and then summarize and give you a little thing. It was really mostly a demo, so you could only do it like one video at a time. And I think people who used it were people who weren't like technical per se, but they were just sort of curious to explore and sort of run their files through the transcriber. And that was sort of how things started off. So as it sort of went from the into the embryonic stage, made some small updates. It seemed like people were curious in terms of transcribing some of their catalog, or some video catalog that they probably had on YouTube. So all I really did was I just added a simple backend with like SQL Alchemy with some basic schemas, but also allowed sort of multiple uploads and downloads. Which meant now people could save the videos and also have those transcripts be saved. So with that, I just created a simple keyword search, but it seemed like that was automatically very useful. So it would be a Streamlit UI, you'd type in a little keyword and you'd actually get the segment of the video that people cared about. And the segment of users here were, it seemed like, the few users that I saw was primarily kind of like students or educators who were trying to navigate a lot of those lecture videos or recordings. And I think one of the fork that may have deviated significantly now, but it was, I think, someone who built this for their school or university and for all their content. So at the newer version, as I started to build this, it seemed like there's a little fork here, right? So one was the UI component for non-technical users, and the other one was just sort of the backend handling content, creating these embeddings, sort of moving them around. And this is something that I was using. So there were like clearly two different pieces there. One was the sort of self-hosted app, and the other one was a sort of a developer tool of sorts. And I figured, all right, fine, maybe if I can go down that route, I can create this little layer that just plugs into these content platforms. And this YTDLP that does this for a lot of content platforms. And there are a lot of local files. And if I can kind of create that little middle layer that takes all of these content, pulls it into some standard format, and then provides a way to easily apply these models, right? And a model really just goes from modality A to modality B. So in this case, it would be video to text and text to embeddings or whatever that is, right? So the idea was to kind of have that in there to transform. And then finally, I had a little tiny DB backend. I threw out the SQLite, and then there's a lot of Pydantic models. This was, again, a little more on the developer focus to give people Pydantic models that they can sort of manipulate and store it in any way. And the Streamlit UI existed as is. Yeah, so in terms of the actual model integration, Whisper was still the same. The primary thing was in terms of representation was sentence transformers. And I just used the HNSW library off the shelf for any indexing and sort of ANN search. So on the developer, sort of the package side, this is how it looked, right? And this still works. The intent is you just sort of create an instance, throw it a bunch of links and local files, and then you should be able to have high-level interfaces in terms of searching, navigating, and getting all the native data types as well. So I'll sort of jump into the Streamlit demo, right? So this is what it looks like. It's running in sort of dev mode, so you'll see a lot more stuff there. So here's an example, right? So this is a video that I've loaded. This is what it'll look like, right? If you go to the details page, you will sort of see everything about it. This is directly from YouTube, nothing fancy here, just a rendering. But now you have these specific video transcript segments, right? And you have this both the original one and also whatever Whisper transcribed. And the more models you apply, you can sort of browse through them. And as you sort of click through, you'll actually go to that specific segment and you can sort of play through, right? So be it YouTube. So if you want to say what the war cry looks like, you'll go to the specific.
It's the sonorous war cry
and you
of
can
a very angry frog.
and you can see the very, very threatening display of
Ferocious.
aggression by the desert frog, right? And so this is sort of the core component. You just have a list of videos, you can sort of navigate them. And so this is another one. It also pulls things from TikTok, again, mainly because of YTDLP. And if you sort of go in, pretty good transcription. This is a base model. This is that levitating song, but this is completely transcribed, and you can sort of go to these different segments. So one other thing I sort of added in was the ability to just ask questions. Again, this is obviously not as advanced as sort of retrieval augmented. It just simply takes the transcript right now and just sends it to OpenAI. I think for the demo purpose, I had it pretend to be Snoop Dogg. So if you go in and let's see, go back, let's see here. And if you want to say what's happening in this video, right? And you say, what is happening in this video? It simply makes a call to ChatGPT at the back. Right. And then it's like, this is Snoop Dogg, totally dropping some of the shizzles and the all the verbiage there, and you can sort of make this in any way in terms of like what information you send down to the OpenAI model. So this is sort of what I had, right? And if you want to add stuff, you can sort of go in. You should be able to add entire playlists, anything that YTDLP supports. You sort of click, you can download audio or video, and you sort of go in and say add, and then it takes a little bit of time. This is a little Mac Air. So in terms of what's actually happening, you'll see a bunch of stuff here. So this is what, if you're a developer, this is what you'd end up sort of looking at. A lot of stuff's happening there in the background. It's sort of loading up the Whisper model and sort of running the transcription. All right. So while this is happening, so I'll sort of go back. All right. So this is where things are right now, right? You can sort of go in and sort of go to that Frogbase dev and pull the repo and be able to sort of navigate. But I'm sort of at a fork right now, right? So I'm like, what does Little Frog want to be, right? Right now, a dev tool is an option that, in terms of building things out. But honestly, I do not like building dev tools. It's just not something that I'm motivated by. So it's more likely that I'll sort of double down on sort of building the UI component, especially with the open source thing. So I'm sort of going away from the dev tooling, the Python package that people can use to kind of use the to kind of go back and forth between different modalities. It may still come down as a product at the end, but right now I'm sort of just moving towards self-hosted applications. So this is sort of, I'm working on it again. Like I said, it's not full time. I work on this the occasional weekend and the occasional evening. What I will be doing, the biggest change is moving away from Streamlit. The affair was pretty great, but Streamlit, when you sort of push it to its max level like this, it really starts to get very difficult to build things. It is ideal for any system that just sort of makes a request, renders something, but if you start to layer in complex functionality, it's just not built for it. And it also then needs a database, and then you have to handle migrations for the schemas. It's just a nightmare. I've been doing Django for almost 8 or 9 years now, so I'm very comfortable there. So I'll be moving to Django. And this is something that it's sort of already 70–80% there. The one thing that I'm personally excited about is the use of HTMX, which makes, I think, Django development a lot easier now. So this, along with the ability to both containerize it and deploy it, both hosted locally or maybe on an instance you own, that is something that will be coming out very soon, hopefully in the next month or so. And the integration there would largely be sort of, there's a bias towards self-hosting. And the intent is that you don't want to, if you have personal information, you maybe don't want to send it to any external providers. You should be able to host your model. So there is a bias there, but there should be other external integrations as well. And the multimodal semantic search is something that I'm looking at, but that's more sort of in the exploration phase, simply because, just taking clip and embedding frames, I want to be a little smart about it. So that will also come in, but likely follow later. And the focus here is primarily sort of like students and educators, right? This is largely because they might not have the capital to afford sort of high quality services, right? And they might have a lot of videos locally, and they might have the compute, so they can just sort of host this. So that is the primary sort of demographic that I look at. And also explorers. If people are sort of happy with pulling things and running things, they should be able to sort of use it alongside research folk. So with that, right, I'm going to stop sort of at the end. So this is in the next phase. I'll obviously have a lot of questions, right? So it's like, I don't know, maybe should I create like a functionality to have like a one-click tuning for clip, right? If you wanted to tune clip on a bunch of videos where you aligned segments with the images and you have a better retrieval model, should that be there? Should it even exist? I don't know, right? So these are open questions that I have, and I think a wise person once said, it takes a village to raise a frog, and I'm hoping, with external feedback, that if y'all have, please go out on the GitHub repo and leave a little comment, or sort of feel free to reach out to me. All my social links are here, and I'm happy to kind of stop here and take questions. We can kind of discuss pretty openly from here.
Awesome. Thanks, Abhay. Thanks for sharing that the progress of the project. It's really cool to kind of see the stack rank of different technology that you use for various components of Frogbase, right? For attendees, if you have any question about the project and his experience building it, either unmute yourself or put it on the chat.
Oh, no, sorry, I did not see the chat. Oh, there we go.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. I think maybe one question from my end is that you see like this throughout this journey of trying out different open source project, right? For different component. What do you observe to be like some of the technical challenges of like making it work all together? Did you come across any like integration challenges or like quality assurance? Maybe you can shed some light on the limits of maybe OpenAI or the SW, right? Maybe some of those components.
Yeah, so I think on the content side, these things are usually harder to kind of link. And so the reason why I stopped doing sort of the dev tooling thing is some of the schemas that you use, right? It's very hard to sort of, like Pydantic is fine and sort of gives you that intermediary, but going down the route of taking those things and sort of plugging and supporting different backends is just a really very engineering heavy role. So that's one of the main reasons with integration I sort of moved away from it. It becomes easier to build a vertical directly, right? So if I'm using Django, then my schemas there, migrations are handled. And I don't really have to sort of support a lot of different solutions that people might sort of pick. That's one on just the software stack. In terms of like using different models, so one thing I'm very curious, again, vision is not my sort of core skill set, but at least in videos in general, I think this is something y'all be looking at is video. When you sort of look at video, most of the frames, right? So the format, the way things are stored is usually deltas over previous frames. There's not a lot of information across a lot of frames, right? And that is sort of very dependent on the video itself, right? Some videos you might not have a lot of movement, and some videos things move pretty fast. So even sort of random sampling of frames and sort of even subsampling and sort of representing, you'll just get a lot of redundancy in your latent space, right? So you'll have like a bunch of clip frames and you can sort of store it and pull things up. I've been playing around with sort of different faster hashing algorithms. I think there's one library called image phash. They do perceptual hash, average hashing, using that to figure out better key points there to kind of figure out where you actually want to bring in clip or something along those lines reasonably well. That's one. The other thing that I'm sort of curious about is, in some cases, they might not be large, especially in human sort of conversations. You might not have a lot of difference in frames, but the expressions might change and those expressions might actually have some information. So it depends on sort of the vertical use case. But that is something that I'm sort of looking at, or I'm curious about. And again, my background, my head's in e-commerce, so I have some e-commerce related applications in the background there, which is, that means open object detection, sort of named entity recognition, not in the text space, but in the video space.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think when one of the previous slide, you were mentioning like one of the next action of the project is going to be more focused on non-technical users, right? Like student, educators, explorers, etc. Right? And you're going to be focused more on the UI side of thing rather than actual that focused stuff. So for just out of curiosity, like for those kind of non-technical persona, what do you think is like what's important for them to like adopt something like this? Yeah, curious.
Yeah, I mean, so I have taught a few classes. I still teach on the regular. So my understanding, right, at least from the limited empathy that I can have from students, is you have really long lecture videos and people usually tune out, right? I'm sure a bunch of y'all tuned out when I was sort of droning on for like 15 minutes, right? And it's totally fine and it's totally expected. But the thing is, you should be able to sort of go back and forth relatively easily on demand. And let's say, even if you have this lecture, not everyone perceives information at the same rate. People might get stuck in places, and that sort of throttles learning. So from my end especially is to kind of take that lecture-like format and sort of automatically chunk it into nuggets. But then people, when humans do this, they actually sort of stitch it in somewhat of a story, right? So they try to make sure concepts are somewhat related, but sometimes there are jumps as well in those concepts. My guess, or at least what I'll be building, is just giving people ability to search those segments, likely when they're trying to do their homework and they want to get to a specific thing that someone said, instead of having to watch the video, remembering the timestamps, they could sort of find that out. That'll be the first step. And then later, perhaps be able to kind of chunk those nuggets and then be able to navigate them as needed, and also augment. And this is where some of the language model capabilities come into sort of real power. Is it can sort of take the answer and maybe give you questions to sort of really help you, or rather prompt you to actually think about solutions. So, I mean, at least for me, language models, I like to think of it the flip way. I think language models, if they can prompt you, that's much better, because it forces you to think rather than sort of, in addition to retrieval systems.
Yeah. These are definitely something that, our team also think a lot about, like how to do things like video chatbot and video assistant, right, to allow us a more interactive, a more seamless interaction between the video interface and the user's interface. And I think that's like the sort of the holy grail of combining multimodal model with large language model, which is definitely a very exciting research direction.
Yeah, I think with teaching, there is a little hole that I want to avoid. Is there's a lot, usually sort of any information stream is complementary, right? You have audio only stream like a podcast, you have video only stream like a CCTV surveillance, right? And then you have like mixture of like gestures, or maybe someone's writing something on the board and then you want to sort of combine them. So there is a loop, sort of a little thread there where something like a presentation deck where the video stream actually has information in the form of text, and then someone is saying something about it, and then you have to do OCR on it and then sort of combine it. Yeah, that's one that exists. It's one thing I'll avoid, but that's another completely different stream. And I think I met a few people trying to do that for sort of a business use case.
Yeah. Like given your background working in e-commerce, right, with stitch fishing, do you think something like this could be beneficial for the business?
Yeah, in e-commerce, you can think of it as, I think the simplest thing is product videos, right? When you have product videos, someone saying something and they're flashing a product, you want to know what the product is. You might now want to do entity recognition, not just. So it's any vision models, you can get things like cup, or I don't know, a general notion of what the category is, but you won't get the entity specifically, right? So if you want to say a specific headphone, right? You know it's a headphone, but you don't know the specific headphone. That is because you're getting that from the context of what the person is saying, what's in the video, and then you can use those as tokens to actually identify those specific things. And you can do this across videos. There's an entire area there. It'll likely be a function of content. I mean, TikTok Shop or any of those platforms. My guess is they'll be looking at something like it.
Great. We have 1 minute left. Maybe one final question to conclude is, so in the beginning of the talk, you shared like about these different projects that you play around with in the past year, right? From like video generation to stable diffusion with fashion, right? To NFT semantic search, and now like this navigation multimedia content. So obviously you like very interested in multimodal AI as a topic, as a direction, right? Research direction. Yep. So what do you think this field is going to evolve in the upcoming months and years, and how do people going to adopt the application of multimodal AI?
Yeah, so I mean, so this would be my sort of uninformed opinion. It's the way I look at it is text or language is very compressed, right? And writing is even more compressed, right? I like multimodal because it lets people speak, and people have more information when they speak rather than to write. Writing is always a subset, right? And in terms of the data and the technology that supports data acquisition, it's always been text first, it's been images next, and now you have videos in terms of just getting that data. And you'll also see sort of models develop along those lines. So clip is largely, or clip or any of these cross-modal models are largely dependent on web with image and sort of surrounding text. I think videos will open a modality where you can sort of really accelerate that, right? Videos by themselves are reasonable to understand relational information with what's happening in the real world, but humans add that additive context from different modalities that humans have access to, right? Beyond just images, touch, smell, all of those things, they're giving that additional information, sort of using that modalities, you'll be able to know a lot more about the world than with just sort of text or just sort of videos. So I'm generally bullish, but I don't know how the market will behave, right? Content is heavily monopolized there with platforms, so.
Well, I mean, regardless, I think that's the like very optimistic type for how the field can evolve. Yeah, I think like just like humans learn, right? We cannot rely only on reading. We also got to watch movies, listen to music, eat food, right? Play around with toys, right? So different sense and what that is important for human development. I think for machine and AI, it would be somewhat similar. Okay.
Yeah, it's generally my sense is text is a poor, it's fine, but it's not a good modality to have general intelligence in any reasonable way. Humans are bottleneck there, right? So
okay, so with that, we are at the top of the hour. Thanks, Abhay, for this great walkthrough of your experience building this project. Very useful for us to learn about technology existing and things that can be improved, and as well as how the field will evolve. For attendees, we'll have the recording of this webinars in about 1 or 2 weeks, and we'll send out an email with those. And yeah, thanks everyone for attending. As a quick reminder, we have the webinar series every week, so you can come back this Friday for another series of speakers talking about.
Yeah, and thank you for having me and the little froglets. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. Appreciate your time and enjoy the rest of your weekend. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for coming by.